Daylight Raid on Berlin, January 30th, 1943. Narrated by Sasha Maggio. On 30 January 1943, the Nazis celebrated the 10th anniversary of Hitler coming to power. A huge celebration was organized, despite the fact that Hitler's forces were losing bad on the Eastern Front. The German Propaganda Archive at Calvin University notes that the planners of the event, even Goebbels, were not aware of the full gravity of that situation when these plans were made. The events were pretty extensive. The Calvin University site is linked below in the description. But I'm more interested in another story that took place on the same day, in the same place. From a 30 January 1943 article, quote, "Just as Marshal Hermann Goering was preparing to start his speech in celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Nazi accession to power today, British mosquito planes bombed Berlin and caused confusion in the hall where he spoke. RAF No. 105 Squadron arrived just on time to disrupt Goering's speech in the morning, and No. 139 Squadron disrupted Goebbels' speech a little later in the day. There was an ironic twist to the fact that the British planes arrived precisely on the scheduled hour of Goering's address. Goering, as commander of the Reich Air Force, not only planned the Blitz on Britain, but he assured the German home front early in the war that Berlin never would be bombed. After the British planes departed, Goering delivered a gloomy speech that was uninterrupted by applause throughout. In this speech, Goering commanded every man, woman, and child of Germany's 80 million population to be prepared to die, if necessary, at the order of Adolf Hitler. This demand via Goering comes after Hitler had more or less sacrificed over 220,000 men on the Eastern Front. Goering also reiterated that capitulation does not exist in our language. Oh, but it does, though. This was interesting because the Casablanca Conference had just reached the decision to demand unconditional surrender of all Axis powers, and the fact that in like 2 days the Nazi forces surrender at Stalingrad, and in a few months they will surrender in North Africa too. Soviet forces launched a counteroffensive against the Germans arrayed at Stalingrad in mid-November 1942. They quickly encircled an entire German army, more than 220,000 soldiers. In February 1943, after months of fierce fighting and heavy casualties, the surviving German forces, only about 91,000 soldiers, surrendered. The battle for the city of Stalingrad proved a decisive psychological turning point, ending a string of German victories in the summer of 1942 and beginning the long retreat westward. Germany proved unable to defeat the Soviet Union, which together with Great Britain and the United States seized the initiative from Germany. Germany became embroiled in a long war, leading ultimately to its defeat in May of 1945. We are obviously not there yet in this series, and in January 1943, the Axis forces have not yet given up North Africa, but their days of winning are numbered. For today, we can enjoy the fact that on a day of Nazi celebration in Berlin, 80 years ago, the Royal Air Force harassed and interrupted propaganda-filled speeches from both Goering and Goebbels, speeches that were also set to be broadcast live to the German people by radio. This was an embarrassment for the Nazis and a win for Allied propaganda and morale. The daring raid, made at a time when Berlin's anti-air defenses probably were at full strength, was a complete success. All British planes returned safely. It was the first daylight aerial attack on the Nazi capital. Thank you for joining me today. The references included in the Twitter thread presented here are linked below in the description. If you are a fan of this content, please consider subscribing to my accounts on any or all platforms, as that helps me know the content is worth the effort. And stick around, this might be the best series yet.